Hello. Yay, audio works. We're wonderful. Hello. Welcome to my room where I make videos and I talk about video games. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing well. Doing school stuff in Switzerland. Shirt. I don't know. I was going to change it. I forgot, but we're going to keep the shirt, I guess. But hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Guild Wars 2 Icebrood Saga. And by the simple, I hope I title this pretty simply, because it's going to be pretty simple. It's my entire review of the Guild Wars 2 Icebrood Saga season. My impressions, how I feel about it, its ending, and, everything that's gone on with Guild Wars 2 in the past year or two. So, I guess let's get started. Itch. Oh, my scalp is itchy. So I originally was thinking about starting with the trailer for the announcement of the Icebrood Saga, and I think that would be a very interesting thing to look back on and probably discuss in this particular video, but for the sake of brevity and just trying to keep it pretty concise, I'm not going to be talking about the trailer, though if you guys go back and watch the trailer, it's very interesting. There's many shots in there that you're like, what's the purpose of that, and all that stuff, but I'm going to start with the prologue and work my way all the way to the end. So for the prologue, I found the prologue to be rather fantastic at setting up the char, and it truly felt like a lengthy episode. There were many different instances, and it felt really hearty. It took its time building the story of what was to be expected in the saga, the char, the Norn, and Jormag. And then they also introduced the first strike mission, which really doesn't have a lot of story implications, but more so just about features. Then we move on to episode 1, Whisper in the Dark. Whisper in the Dark is when Guild Wars 2 Icebrood Saga took a tonal shift towards the more Lovecraftian themes and motifs. At least that's what they said they were trying to do. Though I must say that I feel like the horror aspect would have been more interesting and should have been pushed more than it was. I found it to be really interesting, and they could have done so much with it. So I would have liked it to have been progressed and maybe a little bit scarier, in fact, because I feel that Heart of Thorns oozed horror and psychological intrigue and weirdness that I really liked. And I felt like the expansion for Heart of Thorns was pretty great at setting a very serious tone and a serious storyline with consequences. So I would have liked a bit more of that. The emphasis on the threat of Jormag was really looking to be quite an interesting battle throughout the saga and throughout the season to maneuver. Like, how are we going to deal with Jormag and its telepathic abilities and its messaging, the voices and all that stuff, considering it was, of course, asleep. And how was that going to work out? It was all like, how are we going to go about this? And it was really cool. We had a little bit with Mordremoth, so it's not necessarily new territory, but I think it's a pretty solid storyline. And then in this episode, the Spirits of the Wild also saw some focus, with Raven getting its own mastery line. No other Spirit of the Wild got its own mastery line, which was kind of sad. Come episode 2, we get Drakkar. Drakkar was and still is a pretty nice boss fight, but I don't know if it would have been more interesting as a strike mission or a raid. That would have been really cool if, they had already set up multiple strike missions. If they had introduced a raid and Drakkar was a boss, that'd be really cool. But either way, I really enjoyed the Drakkar fight. It brought some nice life and pizzazz to Guild Wars 2 for a bit. I wonder if people still do it. I know I try to every once in a while. The story implications for this chapter were very entertaining, especially with the Whisper of Jormag, but it was killed off so quickly that one of the most idiosyncratic qualities of Jormag left the story before it could really have time to shine. In the same way, the Sylvari were impacted by Mordremoth, considering, the whole voices, telepathy, telecommunication stuff was really interesting. And episode 2, they killed off the Whispers of Jormag, and they didn't really have a replacement for it. So this one threat of a bunch of people like going to Jormag's side and becoming Icebrood and all of that stuff, it all kind of just seemed to dwindle a little. Then we have a strong shift back onto the Char and Bangar's manipulation / propaganda front. And Aurene got introduced. She's so very pretty. She's so beautiful, Aurene. And then we got Visions of the Past, Steel and Fire. Baby, what was this? I don't know. I liked it, but they never really used this style of storytelling again. And then we have episode 3, No Quarter. This is the final update that really felt like a normal season and carried a decent oomph of story, I felt. And it was probably around this time where the studio's focus had shifted to other projects. They laid the groundworks for a really cool plotline of the Char having issues within the United Legions themselves, while having to deal with the Frost Legion and Ryland and Bangar and what their plans were to trying to tackle Jormag and all that stuff. It seemed to be like a chock full of a lot of potential for just the Char, not even considering the Norn and their thoughts and their beliefs and their goals. So, honestly, it was looking to be really cool, and I actually really enjoyed No Quarter, and I probably will go back and play it just to kind of relive that experience. There was malice inside of the United Legions conflict. There was malice and Smoder having such conflicting methods of operation, and of course, as we all played, Smoder ended up killing or helping in the killing of Malice's spies. And it was like, oh, well, what's going to happen with them? Is Malice going to find out what Smoder was planning and how they bombed the workshop with all the spies in it? Like, what's going to happen with that? Is there going to be some blow up and then Malice is going to kill Smoder? Is Smoder going to kill Malice? Episode 4, Jormag Rising. Yeah, everything I just mentioned, scrap it. It doesn't matter. Smoder dies within the first 5 minutes of the episode, and no one bats an eye. They all just move on. And since the game moved on, I am too. So this is where the Icebrood Saga becomes not so much of a saga, but it starts to feel like more like an Icebrood haiku. With many things echoing throughout the real world, like physical human world, and inside the ArenaNet studio, it seems that by this time, the focus for Guild Wars 2 was actually on the 3rd expansion, End of Dragons. Now, I believe that we got confirmation of End of Dragons a little bit before this episode, but it definitely felt like whenever they had shifted their focus, this episode in particular was where we really felt it as a player base. Ultimately, while I prefer that they focused on the expansion, I still believe it's appropriate to discuss the story that we got, and even more appropriate to discuss the story that we might not have gotten, because it's already over. Spoiler alert. But for Jormag Rising, I would say that this episode was rather middle of the road. While not overperforming, it certainly wasn't the worst. But in the timeline of the saga, this episode in particular felt like they put the foot to the gas to begin the entire season's conclusion. It was almost like, okay guys, we gotta wrap it up. I know we spent so much time with all these storylines and all these themes and these trailers and all this messaging of such an interesting living world experience, but we gotta get it moving. So move they in fact did with episode 5, Champions. Oh, and while I was just had a moment of realization again, but while I was writing my little notes for this video, I realized what the title was for Champions. I finally understood it. It's Champions, because Ryland and Ram, they're the champions of the Elder Dragons. I originally thought it was just like, we will be victorious, and who will be the champion who reigns supreme. That probably also works, kind of, but I realized that it was probably referring to the Elder Dragon champion. While this episode may have been literally long with multiple chapters, the overall story felt unimportant. and kind of flat. It set up some interesting alliances and relationships for the future, which I really hope are delivered in End of Dragons. But that's really how the end of the Icebrood Saga felt, a setup for End of Dragons, but not necessarily a conclusion to the Elder Dragon Jormag and their plotline. And to an even greater degree, the plot of the Char. It felt like it was just written off as having calmed down due to Rhineland and Bangar's extreme encounter with Jormag and all of that stuff. It really was a sharp pivot to, okay guys, we gotta just kind of prolong the production of End of Dragons, prolong the time that we have for production, and break this into multiple chapters and kind of keep players along. And it did, and while it was an enjoyable experience to a degree, it definitely wasn't the pinnacle of storytelling and satisfactory delivery that I've had experiences with in Guild Wars 2 prior. You know, historically, I've really enjoyed Heart of Thorns and their narrative, and I really enjoyed Path of Fire and its narrative, and I enjoyed Season 4 as well. Icebrood Saga ended on a bit of a sour note. And to kind of put a little cherry on top of the sour note, I just have it as one bullet point. I just put down Primordus. Oof. And I think that is kind of, you know, the general consensus of everything is just oof. So if you don't know, spoiler alert, towards the end of the saga in episode 5, in this episode that I'm currently talking about, Primordus decides to wake up for literally like a day or two in the timeline, I guess. He wakes up and he is killed. Just killed. And I have so much to say about it, and I want to say so much, yet I feel like it's just more appropriate and, you know, impactful to keep it short. Kind of like Primordus's involvement in the Guild Wars 2 storyline. Oh, no, just kidding. That was such a bad one. And I honestly, I gotta say, I was never a huge Primordus fan. I wasn't like waiting for Primordus to have their big expansion, their big storyline. But it is very disappointing when you take into consideration the entirety of the Elder Dragon storyline and Primordus as a character themselves. Primordus was the first to awaken, and as we learned, Primordus is the twin to Jormag, and Primordus was kind of set up to be this extremely powerful Elder Dragon. This Elder Dragon that is Colossus, like a world destroyer. He had such a huge model in season 3 of the Living World, which they ultimately had to scale down so very much. Primordus. He woke up and he died very quickly. I used to have this running kind of jab at Mordramoth amongst my friends whenever I would talk to them, and I would always say I would feel so bad for Mordramoth because he woke up and we killed him so fast. Yeah, I don't really feel like that anymore. I kind of feel like Primordus has replaced Mordramoth in this scenario. It's very disappointing. I was gotta admit, in terms of a story and experiencing a narrative, those two dragons are dead. They've confirmed that they are dead. Now, I don't know if that's just, you know, the narrative, or, you know, the game lying to us. But, you know, I could look back on this video in like a year or so and be completely proven wrong, and, you know, everything is just completely different than what I'm saying right now. But current day, while recording this video, Primordus is dead. Not even talking about Jormag and just kind of, you know, how they handled Jormag, but to kind of shine a spotlight on Primordus, it's almost like sacrilegious and blasphemous how they handled Primordus. But I guess that's enough about Primordus. Jormag, yeah, this was also a conclusion for Jormag, and it felt definitely rushed. The final instance was most definitely quickly executed, and it resulted in the two Elder Dragons taking each other out. Jormag, I would have liked a more interesting and, protracted fight between the two. Jormag was trying to build up their army to protect themselves. Jormag didn't seem like they wanted to fight Primordus head on. It was almost like Jormag knew that Primordus could probably beat them, and Jormag was very, very hesitant, but while also seemed to be very intelligent as well. So it's kind of confusing as to why Jormag would willingly come to an arena to fight Primordus. Now you might say Aurene lured them there, but if I was Jormag and I realized who I was fighting, I would say, oh, baby, I gotta call my mom. I gotta get picked up from this party. The party's getting weird. I would bounce. Wasn't that Jormag's whole thing? Jormag wanted to live and just exist. That's why they were defending themselves. And they were ultimately scared of Primordus, which is why they needed, Aurene's help. That's why they were trying to get Aurene to aid and assist them in killing Primordus. I wanted to make a video about my own personal thoughts about the Icebrood Saga. I know many other YouTubers and streamers have given their reactions and feedback to the story, especially those who are more rooted in the story and the lore of Guild Wars. Now, okay, here. Listen up. Listen up, folks. While Icebrood Saga did end on a pretty sour note, and on a pretty rough note, I will say that the Icebrood Saga as a whole was an okay season. I enjoyed it. There were probably 2 episodes, probably No Quarter and Shadow in the Ice. Those 2 episodes were probably my favorite and most enjoyable moments from the Icebrood Saga. But I have to admit, to end on such a choice, it was definitely a choice, and I'll leave it at that. It was a choice. To end it on such a choice it was a choice. Okay, it brought the grade down a little bit in my book. It probably brought the Icebrood Saga as a whole a little bit lower on my list of favorite story arcs in Guild Wars. I feel like the story knew that it wasn't gonna fulfill what it was originally going for, and period. It was an interesting experience. But I would definitely in my opinion, the Icebrood Saga was not a saga. It was a haiku. It was very short. It was sweet at times, and it definitely had a lasting impact. It was definitely memorable. It was memorable. Maybe not for the right and best reasons, but it was memorable. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. I have been reading some of your comments on my final playthrough of the Icebrood Saga, the Icebrood Saga finale, where I play the last instance. I've definitely been reading them. I haven't really been responding because I knew I wanted to make this video, but thank you guys for responding and commenting your thoughts. It's always interesting to hear. I'd love to hear more of that on this particular video in the comments, and I can now freely respond to all of you if you have any more points that you want to say or reiterate. And subscribe if you liked it, share, maybe. And I have a Patreon if you want to help support me there. I've really been dealing with life right now, but I hope I'm going to try to get some more videos going. So, quality over quantity, yay! Okay, thank you everyone so much for coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone!